Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we have to revisit the city of Minneapolis to talk about something that we've discussed before, which is, of course, youth violent crime in that particular area, and how the epicenter of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter riots is one of the most prominent experiencers of what I describe as the George Floyd effect, because they passed a bunch of woke criminal justice reforms. They said, you know what? Innocent angel young black kids committing crimes and whatnot, that's just evil white racism when you prosecute them, so we're not going to do that anymore. And the result is younger and younger kids getting shot, getting killed in the city of Minneapolis, and the police chief has had absolutely enough with this, and so have many of the parents. Now, we're going to talk about this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So in a previous video on this channel, we talked about the Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, who, by the way, is actually Colossus from the X-Men. Look at the size of this guy. And for some reason, people got angry that I described this guy as very young looking, even though he is very young looking. But of course, this is a New Jersey guy who may have taken up the worst job humanly possible in the entire country, which of course is being the police chief of the MPD, post George Floyd, post the Black Lives Matter riots. So essentially, this guy has somehow committed himself to taking a position, as a white person, by the way, in an area where everybody is gunning for the police, everybody's trying to weaken the police, and the consequences of that happen to be increases in youth shootings, increases in Grand Theft Auto, and again, this is all traced back to policy post-George Floyd and the election of Mary Moriarty, the district attorney for Hennepin County, which we will get into a little bit later.
This is an urgent problem. I can't emphasize that enough.
The Minneapolis police chief is sounding the alarm over the number of juvenile shooting victims in the city and the age of those victims as well.
So the setup for this local news segment is pretty bleak, obviously. You have the police chief, Colossus, who's saying that this is the most urgent problem in his area. And remember, he has all the mutant problems that he needs to worry about as well in the United States of America. But he's very concerned about these youth shootings, which just go to show you how bad things actually are. But we also have an increase in the number of younger offenders in terms of shootings, and by the way, that is borne out by the data that we've talked about in previous videos.
According to the latest MPD data, 33 youth under the age of 18 were shot through the first 9 months of the year. The average age of those victims, not 16 or 17 as the department might expect, but instead averaging out to under 15 years old.
As you just heard, a huge proportion of the shootings in the city of Minneapolis involve children, involve teenagers. And again, the ages are not locking in and around 16, 17, 18, which is normal, which is what you would expect. They're skewing much, much younger. Now, we're going to cut to this mother. She's going to talk about her son being in one of these situations and understand that he is a criminal, he is out of control, but the fact of the matter is, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier when Police Chief Colossus said that parents were coming to him, begging him to hold the kids in juvenile detention because they fear they won't reach the age of 18.
The numbers here telling a story of younger and younger victims, younger and younger offenders, a system struggling to keep up, and a mother who isn't even confident her son will reach the age of 18.
My son was part of the Kia Boys.
The mother of a troubled young offender opening up about his struggles.
He racked up a lot of different charges and stuff like that.
Cecilia Rice explains her teen son has a history of running around Minneapolis with guns and ripping off cars. He was inside this stolen Kia that crashed into a bus shelter last year while fleeing police, injuring 7 people.
So here you have a story that is absolutely tragic. You have a mother coming to the media. She's gone to the police department. She's asked everyone and anyone in authority to hold her son in juvenile detention, to do something about him, because if you're paying attention, before his 14th birthday, so we're talking about as a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, he's been in multiple armed instances, multiple armed carjackings, and when fleeing the police, he crashed into a bus and ended up in a situation where where he injured 7 people during that crash. Yet he is released time and time again. And guess what? We talked about on this channel before about people in a stolen car, members of the Kia Boys, that were shot up by other people in a stolen car that were also members of the Kia Boys. Mary Moriarty said, "We knew nothing about these people. There was no way we could prevent this." The police chief, Colossus, said, "No, we actually had parents asking us to intervene. We actually arrested these people earlier." Well, guess what? That is the second instance of her son, who she asked for help for, who she asked the police to intervene on behalf of, getting shot again before he reached the age of 14. Don't believe me? Let's roll the clip.
It's becoming so dangerous, that it's scary.
And before his 14th birthday, shot twice in a 6-month span.
They were in stolen cars, going down the street at a stoplight, and someone else seeing that it was them, some other kids in some other stolen cars, and they started shooting at the car.
So yeah, her son is one of the kids with a lengthy criminal record who should have been intervened with, who should have been held in custody based on the fact that he was already in a police chase in a stolen vehicle with a firearm, already had been shot once, already crashed into another vehicle injuring 7, but he was let out on the streets by District Attorney Mary Moriarty, who doesn't want to prosecute anyone for anything. And by the way, for those of you who are like, oh, well, maybe she just only wants to prosecute serious crimes, we actually talked about this on the channel before, where we had an instance where 2 youths ended up engaging in an armed carjacking of somebody. That person ended up fleeing. The white kid in that particular instance got 22 years on a plea bargain, but the Native American kid who could have been charged with aiding and abetting that murder was given a plea deal where he got time served. And guess what? That Native American, Braveheart, he ended up committing another crime very shortly after he was released on not only those charges, but other armed robbery charges that he also got a sweetheart deal from Mary Moriarty for. So the message is absolutely clear. If you are a young minority youth and you are pointing guns at people, you are even shooting at people, no big deal. Don't worry about it. Let's give you a nice slap on the wrist, because honestly, in honor of George Floyd, we need to let you go, because we have to avenge the evil white racism that is in the ether in the city of Minneapolis, which of course is the capital of the slave trade, was the capital of the Confederacy. And if you disagree with that, if you think that's ridiculous and stupid, then you're an evil white racist too. Again, the district attorney for Hennepin County, Mary Moriarty, and I will emphasize this over and over again, was considered so woke, so annoying, such a problem in the public defender's office that she was booted out. That's the person that these idiots elected post George Floyd, and these are the policies that she wrought, and the numbers are absolutely devastating and disgusting.
It definitely feels like they have no respect for their own lives, let alone the lives of other people.
According to the latest MPD data, 33 youth under the age of 18 were shot through the first 9 months of the year. The average age of those victims, not 16 or 17 as the department might expect, but instead averaging out to under 15 years old.
Now, that shooting victims so far this year under the age of 18 that end up averaging about 14 and a half years old might not sound as dramatic as it actually is to you, and that's because you might not understand that the city of Minneapolis has about 420,000 people in terms of population. So the raw numbers aren't going to be as high as somewhere like Chicago or New York or other larger cities that get up around the million mark. But the fact of the matter is, a high murder mark for the city of Minneapolis is 80 to 90 murders. Now, the fact of the matter is, we're only into 9 months of this year, because this only goes up to September, and they already have 30 shooting victims. So 30 potential murder victims, because not all of these people survived, and those average age of around 14 and a half represents a huge chunk of what would be a high watermark. It would be almost half of what would be considered, again, a devastating year for homicide in the city of Minneapolis if all of them died. Now, of course, some of them recovered. We understand that, but we also need to understand that we still have 3 full months left in the year. So this is really bad.
The age of the victims, particularly with the shootings, is just another indication of how active young offenders are today.
The chief points to August shooting of 4 children, 13 and under, driving around in a stolen Kia. Automatic gunfire the department believes was likely unloaded by someone just as young.
And I think that is overall what's different. They're engaging in crime and in behaviors that are dangerous and that harm not only the community, but also harms themselves.
Look, I understand a lot of people get super skeptical whenever they hear reports of automatic gunfire, and this is largely due to the fact that we have an ignorant media that doesn't know anything about firearms, that mixes up semi-automatic and automatic all the time, or says things like fully semi-automatic. I understand that, but for those of you who are unaware, there's actually a thing called a switch, which is a small, inexpensive part that is made in China that has been flooding the streets, especially in these black gang-ridden neighborhoods, and people use that to modify Glocks to have them actually fire fully automatic. So in this particular case, it is believed that that is what they are referring to, a modified Glock, again, being wielded by probably a kid in and around 13, being fired from stolen vehicle to stolen vehicle on a vehicle full of kids that are all under the age of 13. And by the way, one of the kids in this particular instance ended up taking a headshot, as we covered in a previous video.
That's insanity.
Arthur McCoy is now reaching out to kids heading down the wrong path, a path he himself once traveled.
I was a terrible kid, so I want the best of kids.
He recently adopted his uncle's son, who was involved in this shootout at a Northeast Minneapolis gas station last February.
Seeing that video was tragedy. It was heartbreaking.
The Hennepin County Attorney's Office decided not to prosecute the teen as an adult, and Arthur hopes programming at the juvenile lockup in Red Wing will help turn his life around. The teen bounced between 22 foster homes from the time he was 9 until he was nearly killed at 15.
So again, this actually cuts to the heart of the issue right here. You have a video that's absolute madness. A shootout at a gas station, obviously very dangerous. Multiple shots being fired back and forth. An offender that is at the age of 15 when he's arrested for this particular instance, but a long history of arrests prior to that. And the Hennepin County District Attorney says, hey, guess what? We're not going to prosecute this guy as an adult. We're going to put him through programs, so that way that's going to make them all better. And the thing is, if you remember the Braveheart story that we talked about, the Native American kid, he went through those very same programs.
He has successfully completed 2 residential treatment programs. He's made significant progress, very significant progress. And so sending him to prison, based on everything we know, will create more trauma and make him likely to be more dangerous when he gets out.
And shortly after, he was given a sweetheart plea deal, even though, again, the Supreme Court ruled that you could try him as an adult, hold him fully accountable for his actions. He ends up stealing another car, fleeing the cops at 100 miles an hour, putting more people at risk, because this is the result of these policies.
Well, Hussein Braveheart, a man who took a controversial plea deal for a deadly carjacking, is now accused of driving more than 100 miles an hour while fleeing police in a stolen vehicle.
But this is a case that is, of course, renewed criticism for Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who defended Braveheart's leniency, saying he'd completed residential treatment programs, but sharp criticism again today, including from the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, saying that there must be real consequences for violent offenders.
You have to crack down on these kids with guns, because what ends up happening is that older gang members end up arming them, knowing that they're less likely to face consequences. They all understand this. Remember, we saw the Kia Boys documentary from Tommy G, where he asked the kids if they were afraid, and this was in Milwaukee, of being arrested, and they said that no, because we're only going to serve 2 to 3 weeks in juvenile hall. They understand that there's no consequences, and that encourages the bad behavior.
You only gonna do like 3 weeks shit. It's a misdemeanor.
You only do 3 weeks for stealing a car?
Hell yeah, it's a misdemeanor shit.
We're seeing that time and time again. We're getting warnings from Police Chief Colossus, and yet nothing is changing.
But we're talking about a kid here who lost his way from a young age, who didn't have a system that he can depend on, didn't have parents who he can depend on, and didn't have loved ones who can depend on.
So look, I understand that this guy adopted his relative's kid after he was bounced around the foster system, and obviously a bunch of these people have terrible upbringings, and we should all understand that. But the fact of the matter is, your past, what you went through, your struggles, do not matter to me by the time that you decide to pull out a gun and engage in a shootout and kill people, because that is unacceptable behavior. And the fact of the matter is, the district attorney playing along with this narrative saying, oh, he's just an innocent little baby 15-year-old, when I'm seeing B-roll of a crazy shootout that's absolute madness just on a regular day in Minneapolis, that doesn't line up for me. That's not acceptable. So I understand you're a youth advocate. I understand that you want to advocate for your relative. But the fact of the matter is, he put multiple people in danger. He put himself in danger. And yes, we need to get him off the streets.
Arthur, Cecilia, and the chief believe there are no easy solutions.
They live life off of survival. And in survival, it's kill to be killed.
And it's like, anything can happen, you know, someone can shoot him or whatever the case is, or, you know, or he could shoot somebody else.
So the local news person says all of these people think that there are no easy solutions to this, but the fact of the matter is there is a pretty straightforward solution to this. Lock them up. What the mother said was correct. He could end up in a situation where he's shot and killed and he ends up dying, and she's talking about her kid, who again was arrested, shot twice before the age of 13 or before the age of 14 in that particular case. And that's 100% true. We have to wait for this person to kill someone. We have to wait for him to get killed before we intervene. I think not. We have to intervene right now. We have to deter this behavior. And by the way, they need to pass new laws to get rid of the old woke stupid laws that actually hold youthful offenders accountable. Again, we talked about how all these different various departments had gotten together, and one of the main issues that they had while they're experiencing a spike in youthful offenders is the fact that there are no facilities for them to put many of these youthful offenders in. These are down to the criminal justice reforms post the Black Lives Matter riots, post George Floyd and his effects on this particular city that are creating these problems. If you want to go back to a pre-George Floyd time, you need to pass into law pre-George Floyd policies. It's that simple. It's not crazy at all. It's not radical. It's back to what we were doing in 2019 rather than what we started doing post-May of 2020. But that's not where they want to go. And by the way, even if you pass the laws, even if you correct these problems, you also have to get rid of Mary Moriarty, who doesn't want to prosecute anyone for anything and keeps talking about these youth programs and how, oh, that makes everything okay, when obviously it is not okay. It's not acceptable behavior and it needs to be punished. The parents have lost control in this situation, and when the parents lose control, when the schools lose control, when all the regular normal systems of controlling the behavior of youth fail, that's when you step in with the criminal justice system. But you know what? It doesn't look like they're ever going to go in that direction, despite the fact that you have a solid police chief in the city of Minneapolis who is not afraid to identify the problem, and that's just because the political winds are against him. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the George Floyd effect. Till next time.